So, um, that first deeply satisfying sip of coffee in the morning, it's like a ritual for so many, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. A daily essential for me, definitely.
And, for those of us who really appreciate a consistently smooth experience, Brazilian Santos beans often seem to top the list.
They really do. There's just this inherent mellow quality.
Yeah, that classic central South American profile we love, and it frequently delivers these wonderful nutty and chocolatey hints. It's just, I don't know, a comforting familiarity in a mug.
It is indeed a profile with remarkably broad appeal, and for good reason. In this deep dive, we're aiming to uncover precisely what gives Santos coffee those characteristics.
And maybe more importantly, for people brewing at home.
Exactly, how you can really unlock their full potential. We've got some fascinating insights here from frontier coffee roasters that will really shed some light on this popular bin.
Right. Think of this as your express lane to becoming genuinely knowledgeable about Brazilian Santos.
Yeah,
So to get us started, these beans are named after a place, right? Santos?
that's right.
Where does that story actually begin?
Well, the narrative really takes root in the port city of Santos, which is in São Paulo, Brazil.
Eh,
For generations, really, the city has served as a pivotal global hub for coffee exports. It's, the very gateway through which countless tons of Brazilian coffee have journeyed across the world.
Well,
It essentially laid the foundation for Brazil's pretty impressive coffee reputation. The name itself is just deeply intertwined with the bean's history as a major trade commodity.
that makes perfect sense. The port becoming synonymous with the product. Okay, and in terms of where these beans are actually grown, the source material points out it's a bit different, environmentally speaking, compared to some other famous coffee origins.
That's a really crucial distinction, yeah. Santos beans are primarily cultivated in low to medium altitude growing regions,
Low to medium.
which
Okay.
is quite different from the high altitude, often sort of cloud-shrouded landscapes where many other specialty coffees thrive.
Right. You picture those steep mountainsides.
Exactly. But this more moderate elevation, combined with the mineral-rich soils and a consistently dependable climate within these Brazilian regions, significantly contributes to that inherent sweetness and the balanced body we typically associate with Santos.
Interesting.
You just don't get the dramatic swings in temperature that you might find way up high.
Okay, so less of those misty mountains, maybe, but it sounds like these stable conditions really foster a consistent bean character. The source also touches on why early roasters were so drawn to Santos beans, what made them stand out back then.
Well, what's particularly noteworthy is how quickly roasters recognize the inherent smoothness and the relatively low acidity of Santos beans.
Low acidity, that's key.
It really is. In an era where coffee quality could be quite variable, Santos offered this consistently palatable base. It was kind of a game changer because it meant they weren't overpowering or sharply acidic.
Making them really versatile.
Incredibly versatile, yes. They could be roasted across a wider spectrum of profiles and also serve as a really reliable foundation for coffee blends. They provided balance without getting lost or overshadowing more assertive beans.
Right.
This predictability really contributed to their early and continued popularity.
Almost like a reliable foundational ingredient then. Something that lets other elements shine, but it can also confidently star on its own as a single origin offering.
Perfectly put.
Now let's really get into the heart of what makes Santos. Well, Santos. That signature flavor profile, nutty and chocolatey. Could you give us a more nuanced picture of what we might actually taste in a cup?
Certainly, the gentle sweetness and the subdued acidity are really the bedrock of the Santos flavor profile. That's what allows those lovely nutty notes, often reminiscent of things like hazelnut or almond, and the subtle chocolate undertones. Think of a mild, sort of creamy cocoa to really express themselves. It's a much more, let's say, approachable and straightforward profile when you compare it to the bright, often citrusy fruit notes you might encounter in some East African coffees.
Right, totally different.
Or the earthy and sometimes spicy characteristics found in certain Southeast Asian beans. It's that consistent, mellow character that truly defines Santos.
Mellow is definitely the word that keeps coming up. And it's not just one static flavor, is it? The way we roast these beans seems to significantly influence how those inherent flavors come forward.
Precisely. If you choose, say, a lighter roast of Santos beans, you might discover more delicate nuances, perhaps a hint of peanut, or even a soft caramel sweetness emerging.
Oh, interesting. peanut.
Yeah, it can happen. As you progress through medium to darker roasts, those richer chocolatey notes tend to become more dominant.
Right, makes sense.
And importantly, the medium body characteristic of Santos beans prevents the overall flavor from feeling weak or thin. It provides a pleasant weight on the palate.
So a lighter roast might unlock some delicate sweetness, darker amps up the chocolate.
Yeah.
And the source also mentioned Santos coffee is quite versatile for pairing with food.
Yes, absolutely. That balanced sweetness and the rounded body makes Santos coffee remarkably food-friendly. It complements sweet treats beautifully, pastries, muffins.
Classic coffee companions.
Exactly. But it also holds its own alongside more savory options, like a light sandwich at lunchtime, providing a gentle coffee lift without overpowering the food's flavors.
Okay, so we have a good handle on where it comes from, what it generally tastes like. Now, for the really practical part, for us home brewers, how do we actually brew Santos beans to maximize those appealing flavors? The source had some excellent guidance.
Yeah, this is where the theory meets your kitchen counter. For a standard drip coffee maker, which so many people have, given the inherent low acidity and balanced sweetness of Santos, it's actually an excellent choice.
Good to know.
A medium grind, think something like coarse sand, and roughly a 1.15 coffee to water ratio, that's 1 part coffee to 15 parts water, is usually a solid starting point.
1 to 15, got it.
That ratio tends to best extract those balanced flavors without overdoing it or making it weak, especially given Santos's density.
Straightforward enough for the morning rush. What if you're looking for a brew with a bit more body, maybe more intensity?
Okay. If you appreciate a fuller mouthfeel and really want to accentuate those chocolate notes we talked about, the French press is a fantastic method.
Love a French press.
Right. The immersion brewing, where the grounds are fully steeped in the water, really allows for the extraction of more oils and flavors.
Right.
You just need a coarser grind, almost like rough breadcrumbs.
To avoid the sludge.
Exactly. Prevents a muddy brew. And a 4-minute steep time is generally ideal. This longer immersion really lets those desirable compounds dissolve into the water. That's the extraction process.
4 minutes coarse grind. Okay, what about those who prefer a really clean and nuanced cup, like pour-over fans?
Yes, for a cleaner, perhaps brighter brew that really highlights the subtle sweetness and those delicate nutty hints, a pour-over method using something like a V60 or a Chemex can yield wonderful results.
More control there.
Definitely. The controlled pouring of water allows for a more precise and, nuanced extraction. A medium fine grind, maybe closer to table salt, usually strikes the best balance between clarity and body with Santos beans in a pour-over setup.
Medium fine for pour-over. And for the espresso enthusiasts out there, can Santos handle the pressure literally?
Yes, it can. Absolutely. Santos can certainly produce a very pleasing espresso shot, particularly if you prefer a less aggressively tangy or acidic flavor profile in your espresso.
Good for mellow espresso lovers.
Exactly. You're typically aiming for that classic extraction window, maybe around 25 to 30 seconds for a standard double shot. It might require a little experimentation, with your grinder settings and the amount of coffee you use your dose.
Dialing it in.
Exactly. Dialing it in to really hit that sweet spot where the sweetness is balanced and any potential bitterness is minimized.
That's great practical advice, covers a lot of ground. And the source also emphasized a couple of really fundamental principles that apply no matter which method you choose, right?
Absolutely crucial. Freshly ground beans cannot be overstated. Grinding right before you intend to brew makes an enormous difference.
Huge difference.
The aromatic oils, which contribute so much to flavor and aroma, they start to degrade really quickly once the beans are ground.
So get a grinder if you don't have one.
Please do. And equally important is proper storage. Keeping your whole beans in a cool, dark place within an airtight container will help preserve those precious aromatic compounds for much longer.
Solid advice for any coffee lover, really. Now, let's just circle back quickly to those growing conditions. The source drew an interesting comparison with coffee regions located at higher altitudes.
Yeah, it's fascinating how directly altitude impacts the bean's development and ultimately its flavor. Those higher altitude regions, think parts of Guatemala or Ethiopia, they often experience greater temperature fluctuations between day and night. This can lead to slower maturation of the coffee cherry, resulting in denser beans and the development of more complex flavor precursors. Which often manifests as brighter acidity and more pronounced fruity or floral notes. In contrast, the lower altitude Brazilian regions, with their more consistent and warmer temperatures, tend to produce beans that mature more uniformly.
Leading to
those milder, sweeter notes and a more predictable harvest year after year.
So the environment truly imprints its character onto the bean.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like Brazil's long history and sheer dominance as a major coffee producer have also played a significant role in the consistent quality we see with Santos.
Oh, without a doubt. Being such a dominant force in global coffee for so long has allowed Brazil to develop incredibly well-established infrastructure.
Makes sense.
And just a deep reservoir of expertise in every aspect of coffee cultivation, from farming practices to processing techniques passed down over generations. This continuous refinement has undoubtedly contributed to the consistent quality and that smooth, approachable taste we associate with Brazilian Santos.
It's like a legacy of coffee excellence.
Yes.
Centuries of tradition distilled into every bean.
You could say that, yeah.
Now, one of the joys of coffee is, the opportunity to experiment. The source briefly mentioned playing around with different roast levels for Santos beans. What's the thinking there?
Well, even though a medium roast is very common for Santos, it tends to showcase that balance of chocolate and nut really well. These beans have a versatility that lets them perform well at other levels, too.
So you can go lighter or darker.
Definitely. Lighter roast can be quite intriguing, potentially revealing those more delicate notes of caramel, or maybe even a subtle hint of fruit that might get masked by a darker roast.
Interesting.
Conversely, taking them darker can really amplify the smokiness and develop a more intense, sometimes bittersweet chocolate character.
So it's really about tailoring the roast to what you like. And it sounds like the roast level could also influence how the coffee interacts with, say, milk.
Exactly. If you're someone who enjoys milk-based coffee drinks, often lattes, cappuccinos, a slightly darker roast of Santos might be your preference.
Why is that?
Because those more robust coffee flavors will be able to cut through the richness of the milk without getting lost.
Okay, makes sense.
On the other hand, if you primarily drink your coffee black, a medium roast might allow more of the bean's inherent nuanced flavors to really shine through.
So don't be afraid to explore.
Absolutely. The key takeaway is not to be afraid to explore different roast levels if you get the chance. It can significantly alter your coffee experience.
Experimentation is definitely a big part of the fun for many homebrewers. Now, our primary source for this deep dive is Frontier Coffee Roasters. What's their perspective on Santos? What do they emphasize?
Well, Frontier Coffee Roasters, with their emphasis on small batch roasting, really prioritize freshness and getting the full expression of the bean's inherent flavors.
Right, small batches mean fresh.
Exactly. They specifically highlight that their sourcing of high-quality Santos beans is driven by the desire to capture that consistently smooth and subtly sweet experience that is so characteristic of Brazil's renowned coffee-growing regions. They clearly have a deep appreciation for that classic Santos profile.
It sounds like they truly value that traditional charm. And they made it easy for our listeners to explore this further, too, haven't they?
Yes, they point listeners towards their comprehensive Frontier Roasters Coffee Hub, and more specifically to their dedicated Brazilian Santos Coffee Beans Hub.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, for anyone who wants to delve even further into the specifics of this particular coffee, it's a fantastic online resource to check out their offerings and just learn more.
Fantastic. So as we begin to wrap up this deep dive, what are the sort of essential takeaways about Brazilian Santos coffee beans that we should all keep in mind as we brew our next cup?
Okay, the core message, I think, is this. Brazilian Santos beans consistently deliver a mellow and approachable flavor profile. Think nutty, think chocolatey.
The keynotes.
Those are the keynotes, and this is largely a result of their origin. Those lower to medium altitude Brazilian growing regions, the stable climate, and, importantly, the generations of expertise in coffee cultivation within Brazil.
Right. The history matters.
It really does. And by understanding these fundamental factors, along with how different brewing methods and roast levels can influence the final taste, you're empowered to brew a truly satisfying cup of Santos coffee right in your own kitchen.
Absolutely. Gaining just a little insight into the journey of that bean, from the soil all the way to your cup. Can really deepen your appreciation for your daily coffee.
You really can.
And on that note, here's maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to consider. Beyond the well-known influences of origin and roast level, what other subtle factors might be at play in shaping the unique nuances you perceive in different coffees?
Interesting question.
Yeah, next time you're savoring a cup, perhaps take a moment to really contemplate that. Until our next deep dive, happy brewing.